Hello and welcome back to What Is This Weapon? I am Jonathan and this is a great big gun, the 50 caliber Browning aircraft gun, which has a much more appreciated history on the American side, obviously. And we'll get into that a bit as well, but I am going to keep referring back to the British experience of this gun. So just before we switch to our last gun, which is a bomber gun, I guess I just want to emphasize that this is a compromise. Rate of fire-wise, you've got your 1150 rounds per minute 303 Browning, you've got your 650, 750 rounds per minute Hispano, but big, damaging shells. This thing sits square in the middle. It's also a compromise in terms of capacity, or rounds per gun. So we have, in the Mark 14 Spitfire, 250 rounds for each, bear in mind we only have 2, of the 50s. And we have 120 for the Hispano, because we've moved to the belt feed mechanism after the Mark 5B. The Mark 5C onwards has a belt feed mechanism, not a 60 round drum. So you get 120 rounds times 2, and you get 250 rounds times 2, albeit of different ammunition. Again, a good mixture of seconds worth of firing versus destructive power, basically. And weight. You know, this thing is pretty much bang in the middle of the weight of a dinky little 303 and a whacking great Hispano cannon. So that, again, is why 6 of those things makes so much sense. Anthony does point out in his book and on his website, do check that out, Flying Guns, that you really do need 6 of those guns for that effectiveness. Less than that with the 50 and you are doing less well than an 8-gun 303. It is worth noting, we're talking very much about US and UK aircraft here, but the Soviet Berezhin aircraft gun, 12.7, but 12.7 by 108, a more powerful cartridge, was a better aircraft gun than the 50, but not as good as the Hispano in theory. If you can get 4 of those Hispanos into a pair of wings, you are doing the best you can do in a 1944-45 timeframe. Right, the final 50 caliber Browning of our 3 that we want to cover today, and it's a bomber gun. And legitimately, I believe this is a bomber gun. So our other guns, we can't say whether they've ever been installed in aircraft or seen any service. A lot of them have come from testing establishments and training facilities and stuff. They might have gone straight to somewhere like that and not seen service. Well, there are 2 major giveaways that this is in fact a bomber gun and quite possibly did go out on sorties. One is this. This is either the Mark 1 or Mark 2 flash eliminator. It's RAF specific pattern. It should have a circlip on here. Apart from that, it's complete. No, I don't know what the orange tape is for. Presumably post-war testing of some kind. Answers on a postcard as always. But yes, this is for the majority of RAF heavy bombers that had 50 caliber machine guns, which isn't many of them in the scheme of things, had this form of flash hider on there. So the fact that this gun came to us, you can't just slip this on the end of the muzzle. It's not threaded or anything. The classic M2HB flash hider has this janky looking set of rods and plates to hold it on the end of the otherwise nearly plain barrel. In this case, you replace the whole kind of threaded end cap of the barrel jacket with a special one and a collar that can then receive this on the end. So that's your flash eliminator, also known as a Type J in the literature. But yeah, it's not a Mark III, which is the one with a big sort of flange on it, which I think is a flash suppressor for the shooter. These don't have them, and there are plenty of photos of RAF bombers with this flash eliminator on there. Most of them, not all of the installations. Perhaps if you know about 50s on British bombers, it's probably the Mark 10 Lancaster with the Martin upper turret, so completely American, North American turret. And that just has the plain muzzle of a normal 50 on there. They don't bother with the flash eliminators. You look at your standard B-17 armament, most of the guns on there don't have flash hiders on there either. Sometimes they have a sort of extended one for the sake of the shooter's eyesight, but generally they don't have them. RAF bombers typically do. That's no doubt a function of them mainly flying at night. Now, in Bomber Command, just as in Fighter Command, the 303 dominated, and some people weren't happy about it. Notably Arthur Bomber Harris, who wrote quite bitterly after the war, and I guess in memos and things during it, that why the heck are we sticking with these little tiny 303 bullets, relatively speaking? Why aren't we going to the more devastating 50? Well, as noted earlier, it's not necessarily that much better than you think. Arguably, it's a better turret gun than it is a fighter gun when you have things like Hispano in the mix. And they did look at Hispano turrets, by the way. Now, it's the first 155 Mark X Lancs that have that Martin mid-upper with the twin 50s, but also the Mark VII Lancaster. 180 of those also have that turret. So you might have heard of that Martin upper turret with the 50s in it. You might even have heard of one tail turret in a British bomber with 50 caliber Brownings in it. But what you might not have realised, I certainly didn't, is that there were actually 3 of those, 3 tail turrets. Fraser Nash, famous turret designer and maker, came up with the FN82. So you'll see that on the Mark VII Lancaster. So the 7 and the 10, I believe, had the Martin upper turret. The 7 only might also have the FN82 50 caliber rear turret. Whenever you see a 50 caliber installation on a bomber, well, a couple of them are just single guns, ventral, but if you see them in a turret, it's going to be 2 50s. So you replace you'll see a trend from 2 303s to 4 303s, and then toward the end of the war, you start seeing 2 50s replacing the 4 303s. So going down to 2 guns, but they're more effective guns in theory. So those Mark VII Lancasters that had the Martin turret also had the Fraser Nash 82, FN82 turret with 2 50 Brownings in it. Now the FN82 is only used very late war, but nonetheless, it does see, it is fitted to bombers April 1945 onwards, so some of them are in the air with them at the end of the war at the very least. Now that thing is actually using the American Magnavox solenoid, the same G9 solenoid that you see on all of the US fighter aircraft. Most British bomber turrets that are solenoid fired, including the 50s, are using this thing. This is the Dunlop Maxi-Fort. It says on it, Maxi-Fort. It's the brand name. 24 volt. The aircraft's electrical system is 24 volt by this point. Fighters and bombers. We've got an electrical connector on one end, we've got a bolt at the other, and we have lugs for fitting into the receiver. Now this has got the cocking stud on this side. You would always want your cocking system on one side, your firing system on the other, but let me just show you where it goes. So clamps in there without the cocking stud there, as I say. And just like the pneumatic system where you're using compressed air to force this plunger out through the side plate and activate the sear slide, this does the same thing, but with an electrical coil, which is why this is circular. It's a coil with a rod in the middle of it, and electromagnetic force forcing out the plunger there to fire the gun. So this is actually smaller and lighter than the American equivalent, arguably better, but you do see different turrets using different solenoids based on who they have the subcontract with, I guess. Now, because the FN82 turret uses the American solenoid, that I think is the final piece of evidence I need to narrow down what this was fitted to. And I can at least confirm which turret it was, and it wasn't the FN82. It was the other production 50 turret, which was the Bolton Paul Type D. So that is used on Lincolns, Halifaxes, and Shackletons post-war. It becomes a maritime patrol aircraft. Its early version has a pair of 50s in the tail, and it's the same turret as those other 2 types. So the Lincoln is like a sort of stretched Lancaster, comes in late war, sees significant service post-war, and those 3 types are using this firing mechanism. Different loading systems as well. So the FN82, if you check out the wonderful preserved Lancaster Just Jane, there's a video we can link you to of the turret in situ.
With your legs in and your cocking handles. In this case, with this turret, we have a pair of 50 caliber machine guns.
And you can see on there they have replicated the correct cocking system, loading mechanism in RAF parlance. And it is this extended lever with a flat rounded knob handle on it, and then like a bicycle chain and a spring system to give you the leverage to cock the thing in the turret, and that's very visible. I think I'm not sure if they're original. They look like they might be. I don't know if they're part original or if they've fabricated them from scratch, but they look correct. So that's in the FN82. The Bolton Paul Type D has this, looks to be cast aluminium, very long, with a sort of hollow handle sticking out the side that doesn't pivot in any way. So each turret company would come up with its own solution for cocking and for firing. So what lets me confirm that I'm as sure as I can be, this is from the Bolton Paul Type D turret, therefore it's from a Halifax, a Lincoln or a Shackleton, is we have the ghostly marks here of not only this, the solenoid, might be clearer on this other side, but it's on both sides because you're swapping guns in and out from left to right in a given turret. You're swapping them between turrets potentially. Probably not in this case, but you're certainly swapping them between aircraft as and when they're needed. So you end up with the ghostly witness marks of the firing solenoid from being fitted and refitted, but even more so, I believe, from the vibration. So as tightly as you can clamp these on, there's going to be slight vibration from all those engines and slightly eroding that phosphate finish on the gun. And you end up with this ghost, which shows that curve and then a line, proportions fit. This thing has always been used, almost always been used, I would dare say, with the Maxi-Force solenoids. That means it's not a FN82 gun. And we also have the ghostly marks of a cocking slide. And looking at the cocking mechanisms as best I can, bearing in mind we don't have them here, I believe that best fits the Bolton Paul Type D, which has, a bit like this thing, a cocking slide that directly wears the receiver either side of the slot. I believe the FN82 acts on the stud without having a slide. I do want to confirm that if I can. In any case, the solenoid tips you toward the Type D turret, therefore narrowing it to those three types. The serial number of the gun, this is getting on shaky ground, is nearly 1 million. That puts it into 1943. They could be from some war stockpile. I shouldn't really try to specify. I kind of prefer to think that it would be from a Halifax or a Lincoln and maybe saw service in wartime, but we can't ultimately know that. Now, there's one complicating factor, although it's very explainable, which is that both of those turret installations, and basically all of them, needed you, just like in the fighter wings, to thread off this front trunnion here and replace it with some sort of recoil sleeve, either the Edgewater or another type. This doesn't have that. However, the fact that it has these high-vis markings at the tip of the buffer and the end of the flash eliminator, and the fact that a lot of these guns are with us because they've had a post-war life as testing, like mules for ammunition testing or for armour penetrant or whatever, we don't know, unfortunately. Somebody has at some point stuck one of these back on it and marked it up for some sort of health and safety reason there. So that's explainable. It is, I guess, possible that this was rigged up this way for some specific test trial reason, and this was never in a bomber. I have to be intellectually honest and say that. But the fact of these ghostly marks, the flash eliminator, the fact that the gun is the right age to be and type to have been on a British heavy bomber, I hope it is. And the third type of RAF 50 caliber turret is the one we know least about. It's by Rose Brothers. There's a nice set of images of this and a bit of archival material as well that we can link you to online. It's better, it's probably, if anyone's heard of it, it might be because it's designed that you just bail out of it forwards.
The losses in the main are from German night fighters. To help counter these attacks, this group replaces the 4 303 guns in the rear turrets with twin 50s, which have a far greater hitting power. The work of maintaining and loading the guns is carried out by the armourers. Here, the hydraulic elevation of the guns is checked.
You can unclip the harness and just hurl yourself out of the front of the, or back, I guess, but the back of the aircraft, front of the turret. They cut away the perspex that kept you slightly warmer. I think they worked out it was only a couple of degrees difference, so they thought, what the hell, we'll cut away the perspex and it'll mean you've got a better field of view. You don't have distortion and water and droplets and stuff in the way if you're trying to spot and shoot, and you'll be able to bail out more easily than having to rotate the turret around and fall out the back and all that kind of palaver. Did not see significant service, if any actual operational service. I'm not so sure on that. So those are the three types of tail turret. A few other experimental mounts as well. There's actually an official RAF publication we can link you to that touches on those at least. But the Sterling Mark III had a ventral single 50 on it. Some of them did. And the Halifax Mark III had the Preston Green single 50 cal ventral turret as well. Got removed to fit the H2S radar system. These ventral turrets came in because of the threat of German aircraft with the upward firing guns. So they could just, rather than have to do a sort of special zooming attack to get their guns on target, they could just pull up underneath and fire upwards into the belly of the aircraft. So the 50 was deemed a good defense against that, but it didn't see significant use. And like some of the American aircraft types, we do see in the bomber installations gun heaters attached, electrical heaters, like an electric blanket for your gun, attached to these guns in turret installations as well. We don't have any of those accessories. We do have a gun heater for a 303, but not for the 50. There are several US Lend-Lease bomber types that came with 50s as well. Incidentally, that's sort of happened later on with the Chinooks. The RAF Chinook helicopters came with M60 machine guns that weren't previously in the UK inventory. And it was easier to just accept those and create training pamphlets and use them. NATO standard ammunition, of course. This is a little bit like that. So that's three of our 50 Browning aircraft guns. Still in use today, of course, the M2HB, M2A1, still in widespread service. Still in use on some armoured vehicles around the world. In infantry use on tripods still, very much so. And even as an air service gun, not as a fixed fighter armament anymore, and not on bombers. Obviously, you don't get B-2 bombers with waist gunners, perhaps unfortunately, but you don't. But they are still in use on things like helicopters. I guess counterinsurgency aircraft as well. You're more likely to see the M3 variant. So very late war, post-war, you see the M3 come in, and that has a big chunky buffer at the back and a sort of bullet-shaped booster on the muzzle. Otherwise very similar. That's still in production and use, and again, typically in helicopters. And things like the M2F from Canik that I was able to fire last year, and we might shamelessly roll in a clip of me firing that. Because it's the closest thing I've ever got to an aircraft turret. Twin 900 round per minute, so a little bit faster than this, 50 caliber, essentially aircraft guns, but in a flexible mount. So we're kind of back to some of the early aircraft guns that had the spade grips when it comes to 50, because they're no longer powerful enough to mount in the nose, certainly not in the wings, of modern jet aircraft. And just finally, if you want to see these things fired in an aircraft, there are several clips you can find on YouTube. Not really doable in the UK or other countries, but the US, unsurprisingly, some of the warbirds there have had their armaments put back in, and they are able to fire them, not necessarily in the air, but they certainly can fire them into butts on the ground, and that's quite a sight, I'm sure. So have a look at that as well. And do go back and check out our other two videos on the other Spitfire guns. Thank you very much for watching, guys. As always, do like, leave a comment, subscribe, all of the usual YouTube stuff. Check out our various museums, our website, our online shop. And please do come and see our Easter joust. We are famous for our wonderful jousting that we hold here at our Leeds site. So please do check out the website, check out the socials, and come along and join us for a bit of jousting. Whatever you do, guys, please do come and join us again next week for another What Is This Weapon?